Hey you, yeah, you, the one trying to make a video game. I've got someone here that can help you, and that someone is Intel, which is not a someone, it's a company. But this company, they are going to help you as if they were a somebody and a someone and also a something. Check out software.intel.com/gamedev to find out how Intel is making sure all the innovation in gaming continues to happen on the PC as part of the Intel Game Dev program. Again, that URL is software.intel.com/gamedev. Sign up and start something new. GamesBeat is looking back as part of our GamesBeat Rewind feature, where we're going to be doing a bunch of Game of the Year award categories, our full top 10 countdown later this week. You can check back for all that stuff. We're also doing all kinds of different articles and features looking back at the year that was. This right here that you're listening to, this is the podcast where we're going to kind of start really actually diving into the real categories. We've already done the non-awards. Now we're going to actually get into the conversations about a lot of games we like, a lot of companies that are putting out these games in two major categories that we're talking about today. The first category is going to be the best gaming company of 2017. The second category is freshest new gaming universe. We'll sort of get into how we define those things as we talk about them. But we could start off, first thing, we could just jump right in with people introducing themselves. I'm Jeff Grubb, your host. With me is Mike Minotti. Say hi, Mike.
Hi, I think that these are two pretty slam dunky ones, so I'm excited for these topics.
Yeah, I picked them today because we do have to get Stephanie out of here in a little bit, in like an hour. So I'm like, we could probably do these in an hour. And now I know that we've said that.
I could do these in 2 minutes.
Now that we've said this out loud, Mike, get ready, buckle up, because it's going to be a shitfest. I guarantee it.
No.
Okay, also with me, Stephanie, say hi.
Hello.
And Jason Wilson, bringing up the rear.
Oh.
Say hi, Jason.
Oh, I'm the Rear Admiral of the podcast?
Yeah, Rear Admiral. Yeah, sure, if that's how you want to put it. If that's what the kids are calling it these days.
That's what the cool kids call it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This is the GamesBeat crew. We're missing a few people. Dean is out. He'll be with us for the full Game of the Year countdown on Friday. But yeah, I think we should probably just jump right into it so we don't waste too much time. Best game company. I guess before we dive into it, does anyone have anything, what does this mean to you? When you look at a game company, what would you want to call out so we can maybe define some things for people here?
I think you have to look at each company and the things they do and just see how good of a year they did. So if they're just a developer, how well they did at being a developer. If they're also a publisher, how well they did at developing and publishing. Or if they're those things and also a console maker, how well they did all of those aspects, right?
Yeah, and especially if people are also trying things new, I think is something I'd like to.
Yeah, trying things. I think there's that. There's like a critical barometer. There's also like an actual sales barometer, like how that stuff is translating. Like, is it actually like helping the company? Things like that.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like you hear the company's name and you're immediately interested. Like, this company has proven a track record, whether it's publishing or developing, to know quality and to bring quality to players. And as soon as you hear it, you're like, okay, I'm interested.
For me, it's, what company made the games or the systems, if it's going to be hardware, that left an impression on me all year, from when I first started thinking about it in the beginning of the year to now. And it's not always about sales, although sales tend to go hand in hand with that, because I look at a couple of ones I suggested and they had really good sales.
Yeah, here and there. Actually, that brings us to the nominees. I think we can actually just start listing these right up front so people know where we're coming from. I'll just read this list down all the way from beginning to end. Nintendo, Ubisoft, Blizzard, Annapurna Interactive, Bethesda, In Exile, Sega Atlas, and Devolver Digital. I I know a couple really stand out immediately from there, but I think maybe we should start with some of the indie companies. Steffi, why don't you give us Annapurna, and then I'll do Devolver Digital, because I think I don't want to say like these companies have to justify being mentioned alongside Nintendo, because I really don't believe that. But I want to give them their chance up front to really make their case. So why don't you start with Annapurna?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've been around for like basically a year, I think, and they already have such a great catalog. What Remains of Edith Finch is terrific. It just won a Game Award for Best Narrative, I think, and it's just super memorable. Like really great characters and just like innovative gameplay. And then just the rest of the titles, like Donut County, that's upcoming, kind of that Katamari playing as a black hole kind of thing. The Artful Escape, another really like aesthetically standout title. Gorogoa, which is coming out later this month, I think later this week actually. And I just think that they've really proven to have this keen eye towards new titles that are exciting, tell great stories, and also just look visually spectacular.
That's very similar to how I feel about Devolver. I think both of these companies are showing that there is a place, not just a place, but there's like a need in the market for companies that are not coming at it from the biggest budgets and not coming at gaming from this idea that it has to be the most profitable venture for their shareholders in the world. I think Devolver, just like Annapurna, has established a voice. Like it has a voice where you're like, oh, Devolver Digital is publishing this game. I actually know what that means for the game that I'm going to be playing. Whenever it comes out, it's gonna be loud and brash, and it's gonna have just lots of style. It could be violent, but it's gonna be violent with a sort of a colorful edge to it. These are all things I think you can associate with every single one of its games, to the point where when you hear the name Devolver, I get excited now.
The other thing I like about Devolver is the studio and its representatives have a real sense of humor about what they do.
Absolutely.
It's not like when you go see a game from a mid-tier or major publisher where it's all serious unless it's a comedy game. Like, Ubisoft was never serious about South Park when it presented it to you because it's South Park. But other games, they're dead ass serious about it. But with Devolver, they recognize that they have a very different attitude. They've got their mascot figurehead, but Fork Parker, who's like the demented Colonel Sanders of video games, and they just make it fun and silly, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, I think a lot of these indie publishers, like Devolver and also Raw Fury, whenever you get a press release from them, it just kind of feels like they're just as excited as the developers for this title to come out. Like they're just telling you sort of the way a friend would tell you, like, about this new thing that fits their vision of what they want their library to look like. And it's just like, it just kind of makes you feel good, I think. It's just like a lot of fun to hear about it, and that it's probably going to be quality because it's coming from them. Whoa, something's going on with the video.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was actually going to put the list up in the middle of the video so that people can kind of, if they're watching the video, they can watch along as we start making the list. So yeah, for these companies, I mean, we can definitely leave them on there for now. I do think it is sort of something I always feel about the gaming industry, not just people making games, people covering games, like websites. A lot of it is like the music industry in terms of you're building out personalities, and you're building out bands. These bands have their voice, and they have a music genre that they're experts in, and they go out and they have their fans, and they play to their fans. And I think that's where Devolver and Annapurna are coming from. They get that, and they know that they can build an audience by approaching video game in that way. But it also feels like they're also indie bands playing in a stadium setting. Which maybe is not fair, but I both these companies are worth calling out, at least for now. Let's see if they do get knocked out by some of these other ones. I think what we could do is, for all these categories, is we will have a winner, and we'll have two runners up. So like I said, when I'm saying I'll leave them on the list, I think that's what I mean. So I'm gonna move them over here. Let's see, Jason, you got 2 on air. I mean, in Exile,
Mike,
might fit in.
Mike,
here
you didn't have anything. Well, first of all, Mike, you didn't have anything to say about Devolver?
No.
You console snob.
Yeah, I was wondering if it was going to call me out on my incredible silence during that whole segment there.
Yeah,
you
didn't have one good thing to say about it.
I didn't have any bad things to say about it.
Devolver's on console. Ruiner came out on PS4.
So
Jeff good for them.
So Jeff was just about to talk to me about inXile, and the news I'm just going to spread here, Mike, will make you perk up, because they just announced today on Brian Fargo's Twitter that they are porting over Wasteland 2 Director's Cut to the Switch.
That's awesome. That makes a lot of sense.
Which will be inXile's first game for the Nintendo Switch, and also brings the first, really meaty, dark, old-fashioned RPG to, not necessarily dark, but old Western RPG to the Switch.
This kind of computer RPG style thing.
Yeah, and so the reason why I'm nominating inXile is because it's had a fantastic year. In addition to getting some funding from GOTY, it had one of my 2 favorite RPGs of the year, Torment: Tides of Numenera. This is a RPG that's based on the Numenera role-playing game that comes out from Monty Cook. You might recognize the Monty Cook name because he had a huge hand in Planescape, and some other writers have been working on Numenera as well, folks like Colin McCool, who just had his own game come out this last week, Space Dragon for VR. But Numenera is fantastic. You'll go through and you might try not to fight, but as Rowan was saying yesterday, you'll end up fighting. It's got a very rich story, very great character development, excellent characters that you quest with, and it's deep and it's dense. There's a lot of reading, but it's fantastic. They had a nice little VR game, which is called The Mage's Tale, that takes place in the old school Bard's Tale universe, not the one where it had the snarky 2000 and early 2000s Bard's Tale, but the old school 1980s Bard's Tale. That was inXile's first VR game. It makes you a wizard, and you're sitting there doing first-person wizardry with hand controls, and which spurns into the next part is, they also came out with their Kickstarter for the Bard's Tale 4 this year, and that goes back to the excellent Bard's Tale games of the 80s, bringing it back into that world. So it's just been one good thing after another for inXile this year.
I think the thing about inXile is they have figured out how to maximize the return on having a very dedicated audience. It might not be the biggest audience, but they're dedicated and they'll come to these games. So how do we make the most from that? And they're figuring that out through Kickstarters and stuff like that.
Are you saying it's not the size of the audience that matters?
It's the motion of the Kickstarter. I don't know.
It's more than that too. It's what we've seen since about 2011, 2012 is that there's room for just about any type of game to be successful outside of the AAA market, and now with crowdfunding, with other sources of funding, with how cheap it is, well, I won't say cheap, but how much more affordable it is to make games with small teams these days, you can do that and make all kinds of games for all kinds of audiences. And if you do it right and do it well, and Exile has been making great games in all of its former iterations for decades, going back to so many of them are from the Interplay days. And
about these 3 companies. So I think we should have this conversation right now. So we have Devolver, inXile, and Annapurna, maybe all kind of bubbling up from the bottom, building on these dedicated audiences and establishing their voices and their own alternative business models that people seem to really respond to positively. Which one of these 3 do we pick? If we had to pick one, for example, there's no reason that more than one can't make the finals. But if we had to pick one, which one would we put on there for sure?
I'll let you guys fight this one out.
No, Mike, it's actually up to you because all 3 of us picked a different one. Actually, no. I would actually go with Annapurna.
Yeah, that's so funny because I would too.
And I'll explain why. It's reminding me of the upcoming indie movie studios like A24, where they want to do this in a very, auteur way. They want to give authors, they want to put authors, up front and first in a way that I really appreciate that maybe even other companies, Devolver and Exile, aren't doing. These are, these are outfits. They're kind of trying to be rebels in their own way. But Annapurna's doing something I think is distinct in terms of just coming at it from a very artistic way. And I that's what I would want to reward here, I think. So,
well, you know, I wouldn't say Devolver's not artistic. It's just
it's not what I mean.
Very different in the way they do their artistic.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think in 2017, the company that I would want to recognize for that is Annapurna.
Yeah, I think like Annapurna is sort of bringing in that kind of interdisciplinary approach to games that we've been seeing more and more. We're seeing a lot more games
you're
that
gonna lose Mike with that big word, interdisciplinary.
Boom! Hey now, I have I listened to an NPR podcast yesterday. I'm very smart.
The word of the day.
But okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say, just the fact that they come from a film background. They're a spinoff of a film studio, and that they're bringing in these developers and artists who are, sort of drawing from different inspirations and like sources. Like I just think that sort of marks, the direction that we're going in as an industry. It's not just going to be, it's going to be a more diverse landscape more and more, I think. So it's really, they're part of that watershed moment, I think.
Absolutely. Okay, we should move on to some of these other companies. See, Jason, you and Anthony both picked Sega Atlas. Do you want to?
And we're picking them for very different reasons.
Well, why don't you give us Anthony's reasons?
I feel like I feel like I would pick it for both of your reasons.
Okay, then Mike.
Think I know
Mike,
where you're both going.
Talk. Speak, Mike.
Well, yeah. So the Sega Atlas thing is kind of the key there because Atlas had this real big year of launching Persona 5, right? And Persona 5 really felt like it pushed that series, maybe not super mainstream, but a bit closer there, right? It was nominated at the Game Awards, had a lot of just kind of screen presence there, just kind of treated as this very big deal. Whereas it was kind of this critical darling, and it sort of felt like the coming out party for this series, right? Like, in a way, like, we had the new Final Fantasy not too long ago, but that has kind of strayed from traditional RPG stuff. It almost feels like Persona is, like, the poster child for what JRPGs are.
Right, it's unabashedly a JRPG, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But then on the completely other hand, with Sega, you also had Sonic Forces, which was this really celebrated, really great return to the original 2D platforming style Sonic, with this really interesting development where they just brought in fans to work on it, and it just ended up being really cool, super fun, the best Sonic game since the 90s. They might have made another Sonic game, too. I don't have too much to say about that one. But,
you're allowed to make bad games and still be on this list, for sure. Right?
Sure.
They also made good games. Wait, real quick. You said the other hand, and you mentioned two things that I would not even have mentioned as my top thing from Sega, which is they are approaching PC gaming in a really thorough way. They are
bingo.
It's not just their Total War games, and they got a couple others. Company Heroes is them, maybe, I can't remember. But they are also bringing some of their classics onto PC, like Vanquish and Bayonetta and things like that. And they're helping with Bayonetta because they published that game originally.
They've also been very good about Switch support very early on, where some of the companies kind of waited a little bit, but they were there right.
It just seems like they're making a
lot
of smart decisions.
And let's not forget Endless Space 2, from Amplitude, which they bought a couple of years ago.
Right. So
that was an excellent space strategy game that came out this year.
You know what I like about Sega? They're kind of a fun company, really, right now. Like, you think of some of these companies like your EAs or your Activision or whatever maybe, some of these things you kind of like, oh, they do this, they do that. Sega's just kind of, and I know a lot of it's maybe just perception, but when I think of Sega right now, I'm like, oh yeah, they're fun. Even when they make Sonic Forces, I almost feel like they know it's bad. Like, they're in on the joke in a way. Like, Sega making another bad Sonic game. How cute.
I don't know. I'm almost at a point where, I think Sega has to be in the top 3 here. Has to be in the finalist because of everything we've mentioned. They do seem to get it. They're talking a big game. They're almost like
you're not even talking about Total War this year.
Yeah,
too.
I mean they're almost like the anti-EA with a lot of these acquisitions too. Because think of all the companies they've acquired in the last couple of years, and all of them are still releasing games. They're all active studios.
Oh, their acquisition of Atlas. I know people were worried about the time.
Right.
That has been working absolutely beautifully.
Yeah, Atlas, and then Amplitude, like you mentioned, Jason. That's the company that made Endless Space, right? And then
and then of course the creative several years ago.
Total War. Like but it's years ago, and it's still going. And it's like a company that now I associate strongly with Sega, where BioWare is a huge EA developer. And I'm still like, when I think of BioWare, I'm still like, well, no, the real BioWare was years ago, before EA, at a point.
So this is one that's going to piss people off, but I think this year shows Sega at its strongest.
Well, no, I don't.
I think it's even better than it was during its console days.
Well, it's definitely the best it's been since the Dreamcast era. I'll say that much.
The Dreamcast era was bad.
Dreamcast era. Well, it was bad for them. It was great for me.
But that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the company and its strength.
There's a degree of difficulty thing here too, isn't there? Though, because like, I think to survive or to thrive as a publisher these days it's really difficult. And the idea that Sega has scrapped for so many years since the Dreamcast era or whatever, and is like clearly figuring it out, and is. And then that's not just people, observers saying it. Like they're saying it themselves. They're figuring out their business model is working. The reason they're making PC games is because they sell. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's impressive that they are doing it today. Of all the eras of Sega that we can look back on.
Real quick, I just love that like two of the best companies this year are Sega and Nintendo.
Yes.
So Stephanie, you've been awfully quiet. Have you played much of anything from Sega?
No,
you didn't like Sonic Mania, right? And that's okay if you didn't.
Here's the thing, right? When I grew up, I didn't have a console at home, and so I never really played Sonic growing up. I played like all the PC like knockoff versions. Like I played Jazz Jackrabbit.
He's been showing up in the news again.
Yeah, so like when I hear that, I'm like, oh, my childhood. But like I have no real strong emotional connection to the Sonic franchise.
Mike,
Stephanie,
Mike,
real quick. Told me that you're
real quick. I think I want to
ahead.
translate what Stephanie said. She said Sonic was never good. And she said it right.
She said
Sonic was never part of her childhood.
Hey, Mike Minotti, Sonic was never good.
We're not getting into that. No, you don't want to go down that road.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
The memes are good.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, you actually do reference an NPR podcast in your copy here, Mike.
Oh yeah. This NPR podcast is coming up multiple times.
What podcast is it? I have to know real quick. I'm sorry. I don't want to derail.
It was Brain Talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I use it as justification for why the Atari was never good, ironically.
Hidden Brain, come on.
Hidden Brain, whatever. Brain Talk, something to do with the Brain.
It's like Brain Talk is the generic NPR name of the podcast. Like if you're just like, oh, we're Brain Talk or whatever. All right, Mike, we keep interrupting.
Steph, you always tell me you're secretly weeb trash. How did you not play Persona 5, like the ultimate weeb trash game?
It's here in my house. I just haven't had a chance to devote 200 hours to it.
It's more like 90 hours, maybe. I think that was my. That is the ultimate weeb trash game. You can't claim that title for your own unless you dive into that one.
I know. I'm gonna have to complete my transformation and finish Persona 5.
Exactly.
This isn't my final form yet. I need to get there.
Okay. Yeah. So. I guess we should dig into some of these other game companies. Bethesda, Jason, do you want to touch on them real quick?
Yeah, so this has been a very quiet year for Bethesda in regards to big games. But you take a look, they're putting Skyrim on the Switch, which I've been playing daily since it came out, and it's become, I'm just engrossed in it as I was the first time around. You've got Skyrim in VR and Fallout in VR. You've got them putting out an excellent card set and an excellent story expansion to Elder Scrolls Legends, and continue to build on their successes with the Elder Scrolls Online. So they're just shepherding everything very well, building on things in between, keeping their franchises relevant as other games come out, so people don't forget about them. And it's just been just very quiet. Like, and then of course here at the end of the year, then they make this whole thing about, oh yeah, we're still making single player games, and you take a look at that, and all that stuff is single player. If you wanted to make it that way, I mean, no one needs to play The Elder Scrolls Online with friends. You can always play it by yourself.
Of all the companies here, Bethesda's the one I'm most conflicted about on this list, and the reason is they have had several great games this year and last year, and several of those have not performed in terms of sales. And so I almost and that's not me saying, oh, these games have to sell to be successful to me. That's not what I mean. It means, what I'm saying is, it feels almost like I'd be giving them this because I pity them, because they're doing what I want them to do, and I want to recognize that even though they're not succeeding. It feels like I want them to not even be in the top 3 on this, come back in 2018 with very similar, high quality games that they have figured out how to sell in a way that people will come back to and give more money to.
But you're just talking about really one game, Wolfenstein.
No, I mean, no.
And I don't think Prey didn't sell well either, right?
No, and Dishonored, the Dishonored DLC did not sell well, and
Dishonored 2 didn't sell well.
Dishonored 2 last year didn't sell well. This is all part of a trend. These are the games. All those games we mentioned are immersive sims. This has led people to say, oh, immersive sims aren't financially feasible, but I think it's single-player narrative games, which is, one of the reasons it was exciting to see Bethesda do that video at the Game Awards, saying, "Oh, we're gonna."
Yeah, but here's the thing: if you've got live service games that are making money and doing well, like The Elder Scrolls Online, does it matter?
I don't know. I mean,
I don't know if Elder Scrolls Online is doing well enough to
maybe one or two of these
failures of slight failures. Also, I played that expansion and was not impressed, just on a personal level. But that's
right.
That's just
I bounce off all the immersive.
I'm gonna throw back that's just you when you try to bad talk Mario later.
Well, that really is just him.
Okay, I never said it's bad. I'm just saying it's not 100 out of 100.
We will get to Mario.
Oh, it's easy. We will get to Mario. 100 out of 100 ever.
We will get to Mario.
I thought it was just
no,
okay.
No, it's not happening now.
I need to get another.
This is gonna be such a long week. Okay. All right. Where are we? Okay. So Bethesda. Okay. I'm just hesitant to put them on this list because there are companies we would have to start knocking off. Because I'm just gonna move them over now because I think the argument would have to be why Nintendo would get replaced by someone else, at least in the top 3. Their year was just too strong all around.
Jeff, getting close to that 30-minute mark. We're still on topic.
No, I know for sure. So let's.
Well, we can always just make it one topic.
No, we got to get through these.
I believe in us.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll be fine. So, actually, Mike, why don't you give us Blizzard? Give us the high points on that, and then I'll
real
give
quick. Ubisoft. Well, I'm not. This has basically been a live services year for Blizzard. I kind of put it down there because, as a devil's advocate, I'm really. If I could endorse one, it would have been Nintendo, but I think you already took that one because it was obvious. But they did. I think Hearthstone maybe had its best post-launch year ever. The first 2 expansions were really good. The first one in Goro was fantastic. It was one of the best metas the game ever had. The Lich King was also really fun. The Death Knights were good. We're pretty early into the 3rd expansion. It just came out, Kobolds and Catacombs. But the single-player campaign thing it brought, which I may or may not be playing as we record this, is super fun. It's the best single-player content the game has had since it launched. It's kind of opened my eyes into the potential for single-player content in the game. I haven't even really played that much, like, multiplayer. I've just been playing this mode. It's just super interesting how it's like this roguelike card game thing. So super fun.
I love the tribute that it is to Dungeons and Dragons and every role-playing game that came before Warcraft.
It's amazing how well Blizzard can handle maintenance years, where it can just maintain and still really thrive.
But it wasn't. But they did more than that too. They totally revamped.
Heroes of the Storm was big,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was a huge revamp.
Totally. I mean, that's like, other companies update their games all the time, and it's not as big of a deal as when Blizzard does it, because Blizzard just does it with such panache. I'll do Ubisoft in a similar quick fashion.
Well, don't forget their work on Overwatch this year.
Yeah, I think that's all encompassed in what my
Overwatch has been a little bit more almost problematic, I would say. It's been good in terms of content, but there have been some missteps. Notably, the Mercy rework initially was an absolute like dismal a failure. They tried to nerf her and made her like way more powerful to the point where all the other healers were kind of unplayable for a bit, and that was a little rough. And they did fix it to their credit, but for like a couple months or however it was kind of miserable.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a sophomore year for that game. It'll get through it. It'll be fine.
Sure.
So Ubisoft.
And don't forget the Necromancer for Diablo 3.
I forgot it.
Yeah,
to be
totally.
honest.
Oh god, it was so much fun.
No, they need to do something. They need to do next Diablo now, because I think Diablo 3 is worn out.
Ubisoft is on this list because.
Excuse me, Jeff. I'm not finished. Yes, it's good to be the king. What was great about the Necromancer was, adding a new class and still making the game feel different and fresh to me, even though I've played it through several times by now.
Yeah, I mean, again...
See, I had the opposite feeling where I started it and I was just like, I can't with this game anymore. It's had its time and I'm kind of done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all encompassed in just Blizzard doing these things well for at least most people, even if not everything hits for everyone. Okay, no, for real, getting to Ubisoft, because we do have to pick a winner here very soon. I put them on here because it just seems like they are figuring it out, and it is live services. Their games, that Ubisoft, there's the Ubisoft model. They make their games across a bunch of studios, and they all have a very similar feeling a lot of times, and what they do is they change genres or perspectives, so you're doing a lot of the same stuff from first person or third person, or in a sci-fi setting or a fantasy setting or whatever. They have found a way to really build up communities around each one of their games in a strong enough way that even when they start screwing up or they start to fade, they seem to always seem to find a way to revive it. And it's because they have like strong communication with their fans. It's because they have weekly content updates coming out, and then they have bigger, more substantial updates coming out about every quarter or so. This has led to Rainbow Six Siege having 25 million players, or at least registered users. And that's a game that when it came out, it kind of came and went, and for good reason. It wasn't the most fully fledged out experience at the time. And now throughout this year, we've seen similar patterns with For Honor and Rainbow Six or Ghost Recon Wildlands, and who knows, Assassin's Creed did really well from the start, and maybe it could have a similar progression as well. But
I'm impressed with the diversity of games Ubisoft has released this year, right? Like you had your Assassin's Creed, and that was nice after the year off, and For Honor and Wildlands. But you also had Mario and Rabbids, this really weird tactical game with Mario and the Rabbids, and it was way better than it had any right to be. And you also had the South Park RPG, which was super fun.
They still take risks, and they get away from their core. Their core things. It just seems like they are always experimenting, so they know they're going to have to be changing up what they're doing in the next 5 to 6 years. So they're always looking at the horizon, and they're good at it.
And they're doing this all while at the same time looking over their shoulders and making sure that they're still independent and not being the subject of a hostile takeover by
exactly.
Vivendi.
I mean that's a real thing.
And we know how that. And we know. The bad things that happen when Vivendi gets involved with
exactly. And I mean, I think that the bigger point here about Ubisoft, and we'll move on to Nintendo, is just that is a company that is unique to the point where if you do kick out the people that kind of built it up as it is built today, the Guillemot family, it probably wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't work. Mike, I've been talking a lot. Why don't you take Nintendo?
Nintendo is just, I don't know. It seems so easy for me here. Right? The Switch, we found out today, has now sold 10 million, or was it 12 million? Something.
It's 10 million in 9 months. Yep.
10 million systems.
10 million systems.
I don't know how many times I asked you guys not to refer to these damn things as units.
I didn't say unit.
Look, people know what we mean when we say units.
This is my system.
We're not a retail blog.
This is my unit.
I think total lifetime sales for the Wii U in its whole 4 or 5 years were 14 million. So it's almost there already. So they just absolutely completely turned that around, which is really impressive and really neat. And then they also released two of the highest, maybe the two highest reviewed games of the year in Zelda and Mario. And it also does mean something that those are Zelda and Mario games. They're two most important franchises. They released two games. They're slam dunks. and they are positioned perfectly. You have the Zelda game as the launch title, then you also have the other one, Mario, coming in right in the beginning of the fourth quarter, right? Like, that is just absolutely ideal, I imagine, if you want to do that stuff. And then outside of that, their mobile efforts moving forward, I think Fire Emblem was probably their best thing yet. They just launched the Animal Crossing game. The SNES Classic Edition was fantastic, and their supply of it has been much better than the NES Classic, right? So just in terms of, like, launching a new system, especially, like, this really, like, we almost haven't seen this before, this weird system kind of coming out while the other generation is still happening, but having it be a complete success, releasing a lot of great games, and even beyond those two, you know, I mean, Splatoon 2 was fun. ARMS, maybe it's not the best thing ever, but as an early kind of launch window game, that worked out really well.
They also had
Mario
something
and
new
Rabbids.
every month, though. Like, they had something coming
It
every
felt
month.
like it, right?
They really did. I mean, if
Like-
you look back, I think they had at least one major published game from Nintendo, and then maybe, like, once, one of those months was maybe, like, a partner, but it was, like, a big partner. I can't remember. No, but because
Like an Ubisoft
yeah, but I
or
mean,
something.
Nintendo published.
they had a lot of-
yeah. Or no, Ubisoft did.
Or
Yeah,
Bethesda.
you're right. That was the game.
Yeah, they had a lot of nindies
Exactly.
too. Like, they had a lot of really
Oh.
great indie titles.
The
in
indie
the
support has
eShop.
been fantastic for
Yeah.
the Switch, and it's becoming, like, the new kind of go-to home for
It's
indie
not just like the
games.
support's been fantastic; the results have been fantastic. Those games are selling and making a lot of money on the Switch.
Right, and it's
Like,
it's whether they're kind of bringing old favorites like Stardew Valley or Shovel Knight, or some of these new things like Golf
Right.
Story, super fun. Like, that's system is just, like, built for indie games. It's
And
fantastic.
then you have a retro component too. Blaster Master is fantastic.
Blastmaster, and the other one that really impressed me was Dragon Boy or
yeah,
Wonder
for sure,
Boy and the
yeah.
Dragon's Curse.
Yeah.
I thought that was
And these
super
are-
fun. That was
The
one of
these
the,
are all games that you could tell were
Devolver.
working. They were coming out for other systems. They were coming out for PC, and then the indies saw a chance to work with Nintendo, and Nintendo apparently reached out to them and was very aggressive about being friendly and welcoming and saying, "Hey, we want you on here for real. We are being very serious. We want your games on our system." And all the indies responded because all of them grew up playing Nintendo, and it has paid off in a huge way. I'm sure we're going to get to a point where there is a too much. We get the problem where there are too many games on the system. Maybe some people feel like we're there already, but it's not really an actual problem. It feels like one of those good things to have happen.
Well, the question will be, how does this sustain the success next
Right.
year?
I almost feel like next year can't be as
And
good
that's
as this
okay.
year, because the first year for the system was
Right.
fantastic. Like, next year it's going to be like the Kirby game, the Yoshi game. Maybe they'll finally port Smash
Yeah,
Brothers
well,
over.
they just announced maybe
Bayonetta
Bayonetta 3 is
but-
going to be like one of those Mario and Luigi level games, I think, or Mario and Rabbids level games. So they have stuff coming.
don't
They're
for-
already making announcements for next year, but we'll see. But
And don't forget that there could be something special, something different that you don't
Totally.
know of. That could be
Okay.
ported from another system or for the PC. And, it could be a really good indie or
that's
two, too.
yeah, but that's next year. Let's stick on 2017. I think if you just look back, I would still want to give this one to Nintendo, just overall. But before,
Yeah, it was just such a good year. It's like in like the annals of good years, this is up
yeah,
there.
it just
almost.
they did so many things right that even when they made their mess ups, like I don't think Animal Crossing Pocket,
Like the
yeah,
app.
the app exactly, yeah, those things we could just
Yeah.
like they don't even come up on the radar anymore because they're just like, who cares? Yeah, they screwed that up, but everything else is going so well. Before we
Yeah,
declare
but-
Nintendo the winner,
but
I
who-
want to say are there any of these companies that aren't in the finalist over here among Sega, Annapurna, and Nintendo that we would want to replace with one of the ones that we haven't put on the finalists? No.
Those three seem pretty good to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would have a hard. I mean, maybe Ubisoft, but I wouldn't knock off Sega for them, and I feel like I want Annapurna on the list for the reasons stated earlier. And yeah, Nintendo, I think, is staying. Yeah, okay. I think that those will be our three finalists. And any argument against Nintendo being number one on this?
No, they did everything right this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of killed
All right,
it.
excellent.
Yeah, I think for me, like I think Nintendo did such a great job with sort of helping with the couch co-op revival too. Like there's so many great
Mhm.
co-op games on the Switch, and I thought the Switch was going to be like overhyped, but then it just turned out to be such a great console,
just
you know, and
smart
like it won me over.
Absolutely. And I think that's the story of a lot of people. All right.
I almost play it every day.
Yeah,
really.
Me too.
It's great.
Me too, especially since Skyrim came out. I played it on transit today.
All right.
Yeah.
I wish I could take public transit.
Los Angeles.
I live in Ohio. I take a car everywhere.
That's the same way it is in LA, though. So yeah. All right, let's get to this next topic. So this is the freshest gaming universes, or freshest new gaming universe is kind of how I put it. I'll kind of give a basic rundown of what this award is. It's a way to celebrate new IP without saying the words new IP, because I think it's such a clinical way of putting things. And it's also a way of saying, okay, this is not necessarily a new IP, but it came out of nowhere, or it was its breakout year for these very specific reasons of having this stunning addition to the gaming catalog in the form of its characters or its setting, things along those lines. So I'm gonna dive into the nominations real quick, and then we can start talking about this. Horizon Zero Dawn, Neo, Hellblade, Nier Automata, Torment: Tides of Numenera, Golf Story, Prey, Gorogoa, and PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Let me start with PUBG real quick, just kind of because I think I'll be okay maybe just dropping this. I would say that they did. It's kind of it haphazardly fell into establishing an interesting world. This game's still in early access. It will be until next week. And it has this vague Eastern European setting. They just revealed the desert map. I've been playing on that, and that really is awesome. The reason I would consider it for this category before I drop it is when you are in there and you are making your own stories. This is something we talked about a little bit before we started recording. You build memories in those physical places that the developers built around the map, and everything gets its own has its own character, and you remember doing things the next time you're there. You'll say, oh yeah, that's where I got into that really awesome fight with that dude for like 10 straight minutes, and we both died in the blue because we weren't paying attention anymore. And that doesn't happen in all of these games. I think I've been playing a little bit more Fortnite, and it doesn't have the same effect. The map doesn't have that same character. And so they definitely nailed that there, although I don't even know if they realized why that happened. Although, I don't know, at the same time, playing the desert map, maybe they did, because that desert map has been very good so far. But that said, it's not going to play with some of the other contenders here, so I won't feel like we have to get it over onto the final side here. So does anyone else want to take this away with one of their nominations?
Well, for me, I think it's, for PUBG, it's the stories you tell. There's been so many from so many different people in so many ways. But going to the game I nominated, it's Torment: Tides of Numenera. Numenera is its own role-playing world. It came out a few years ago. It was started on a Kickstarter by Monty Cook Games. Monty Cook was one of the people at TSR who helped write Planescape, and which is the best, my favorite of the Dungeons and Dragons role-playing settings, but is no longer supported. And this world, you're playing in it thousands and thousands of years later, after the world was technologically advanced, and then it goes through decay and cataclysms. And now, as you adventure around, you discover hints of this old world, but at the same time, it's kind of a blend of magic and technology. But that magic, is it magic or is it technology? And it's just fantastic when we go through and explore things. One of the levels has you going through different orifices inside the belly of a beast to go to different worlds, which I just love. And it's a world that I definitely want to keep exploring and keep digging into.
Yeah, I could see that being one of the finalists here for sure. We can move that over. Is there any baggage from the old Torment game or anything like that that would make you reconsider? Okay,
no.
Good. Yeah, that's good. To
No.
hear. Let's see, Mike. Can you do Nier?
Yeah, Nier's weird because it's like it's not a new franchise, I guess, but I feel like for me, and for a lot of other people, it may as well be, right? because it felt like these games only had. I mean, the series roots go back to the Drakengard games for PlayStation 2, which I don't think a lot of people played. And then there was a Nier game for Xbox 360, which maybe had a few more people playing. I don't know, but I feel like I never heard buzz about any of those games until this one. This was when I dropped into. Even though it is connected, it is far enough, like, separated timeline-wise. Like, it's 100 years in the future thing. There's only a few references here and there to the old games. That it kind of feels new. And that is what I liked about the game, was its setting did feel kind of fresh. I know I was trying to explain to you earlier on Twitter why I liked it, because you're not quite on board the hype train. It manages to be kind of solemn and a little dreary and drab, and maybe even a little moody, without going full on Hot Topic. It almost kind of scratches that itch that the Kojima Metal Gear games used to for me, where it is a little weird and it is a little bizarre. Even Death Stranding, like, some people were kind of laughing when it zoomed in on Norman Reedus' mouth and the baby's there and he's giving the thumbs up. I kind of like that stuff in a weird way.
I love that.
And especially without the Kojimas for a bit, this really did scratch that itch and kind of push that need. And there is some intrigue in the world. There is this kind of, like, desolation of it, which I find interesting. Even compared to a lot of other sort of post-apocalyptic games, which sometimes try to, like, distill a lot of humor in it, or just kind of turns into Mad Max or something like that. This felt very different to me.
I think the soundtrack in Nier just made exploring the world that much more impactful. Like, if I can't really even separate the two in my mind, really, because it was just, they did it so well. Like, when you entered a new area, the way the music would punctuate it, and it just really made you feel like you were actually exploring a world, in the distant future.
Yeah, so I played through only the first ending, got the first credits, and I only touched playthrough B a little bit. But I get what you're saying, Mike, about the desolation and them making a point with that stuff. It works enough for me that I don't necessarily disagree with it being on this list. My problems were more mechanical and entertainment wise. Like, I just wasn't entertained most of the time.
Do I get to finally hear
them? No, because I still don't feel like, because they don't pertain to my argument against why it shouldn't be on this list. I don't really feel that strongly about it not being here, because I get it. I get this part, especially the music. The music really is worth calling out and saying that when you consider this package as a whole, the thing that they are presenting to players, it really is impressive in those handful of ways. It's world and the music. I get that, and the character design. And the characters themselves are really good. They do stand out. And I think those are the things that kind of win you this category. So I'm not too against Nier being here. So I think that's one we can also move over. It does want to bring me to Hellblade, though, if you guys are okay with me moving on from Nier real quick.
I'm not okay with it, but I guess,
So I've started playing Hellblade very recently. And I think it's really impressive when you realize it's coming from an independent studio now at this point, a studio that's worked on a lot of these kinds of games before, or, big budget games before. But they are working in a time where they could think of every possible technological way of telling their story or making their game, and they are using it all. It is such a technically impressive game. In terms of its, the fidelity of the characters and the way that they portray, mental health in a way that is, it doesn't feel it doesn't feel exploitative, and it also feels truthful in the way that the voices will come in from multiple sides of the 3D audio, or like some awful character from the main character's past, Senua's past, will come in as this sort of rumbly, tumbly visage from the side that's like vibrating, and it almost looks like maybe, wait, is that a real actor? I can't tell. It's so realistic looking. I think it might be, but it's almost
which is cool, because at first I didn't think so, and it was really neat that they got to a point in the performance capture where they can do that stuff, and it's not
right.
distracting.
Yeah, it's like I'm like, man, I think I can't. It doesn't matter in the end, because the point was, it just made me like stop and like really observe what this character was doing, and I'm like, okay, this is this is some really, really impressive stuff. The game itself, I think maybe some similar stuff to Nier. I'm not enjoying the puzzles at all. The combat is, I could take it or leave it. Yeah, it's very standard stuff. But they are doing such smart things with the tools available to them today that I think it's another game maybe worth calling out. I'm not sure if it's going to be better than Nier for this group overall, but I think it's right there in the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been enjoying it too as I'm playing it. I guess, yeah, I really can't disagree with what you say. I am more impressed with it in a sort of storytelling and visual way than I am mechanically, which is what a lot of people have kind of echoed.
And I think that's, again, that's okay to a certain point. It's not going to be on my top 10 list probably for those reasons. That doesn't mean it's not worth. That's why we have these other categories. That's the whole reason we're doing this week. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Jason already mentioned his game. Yeah, Stefan, why don't you give us yours?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about. So I don't know necessarily if this is going to make it to be number one, but I feel like it's worth mentioning Gorogoa, which is coming out, on the 14th, I think. And I think that it's worth mentioning because when you think of world building, you usually think of these like vast universes that you can explore and just like the expansiveness. But with Gorogoa, it's really interesting because it's contained. So like the story behind it, it's a puzzle game, but the basic story is that as a young boy, you see this like strange dragon, like mystical creature called the Gorogoa. And the story follows this boy through his life at different stages as a young man, as an old man, as he tries to find this creature and like make meaning of this thing that he's seen. And as you're sort of going through the different levels and solving puzzles, you see parts of the world and you see hints at mythology and you see hints at like culture. And I think it's really interesting the way Jason Roberts, the developer, sort of develops this whole world without really any words or any explanation and just kind of relies on familiarity. Like there are things like bus stops or, like living rooms or museums, but the objects in them are just slightly different enough and draw from just a wide variety of architecture and different cultures that it seems like this weird mishmash of like alien, I don't know, like an alien culture that we really are actually not familiar with at all. And so it kind of like crafts this world that you don't really go out into and explore per se, but it really sort of like fires up your imagination about where this character actually is and what he's actually going through. And I think it's really impressive that it does that through a puzzle format and like a largely static format where you're just kind of seeing it in the background and occasionally interacting with it, but just sort of like leaving it there as just sort of a backdrop,
Yeah, I for this one and for Tides of Numenera, I'm wondering if we should have one or the other. Unless, because I would drop Nier, I think, for Gorogoa, and then Horizon Zero Dawn, which we'll get to in a second.
Sure, Nier already kind of has this weird condition of it kind of
exactly.
Not being
So I think we could probably
really...
maybe that's the answer right there. Okay, yeah, that's what we're gonna do here. Because we're at disadvantage in these situations where we have like two people who are passionate about two different games and no one else has really played them much. But when those situations arise, I typically like to kind of give advantage to those games because if people feel that strongly about them, I want to kind of get them on there. So let's.
I also love Nier.
Well, no, you tell me Gorogoa or Nier. That's fine.
I think Gorogoa is just so it's so fresh. And the fact that this developer spent 5 years slaving away on this game, drawing, coding, doing everything, and it's just his brain in a game. I think it's like it's a pretty great experience.
I'm gonna try to play both of those games when I get some time over the holiday, I think. Okay, so Horizon Zero Dawn. Real quick, Anthony put Golf Story on here. I like Golf Story. Mike, you play Golf Story. It is doing a very good imitation of SNES RPGs, and it builds on it in some creative ways in terms of some good writing and solving everything with golf and building this whole story around golf. But it is Mario Golf one more time, so I think I'm okay not putting it on Horizon Zero Dawn. This is a game I'm trying to play through right now still, and I nominated it already because the thing that I'm really responding to the most is actually the universe, the world, the characters, the storytelling. I'll tell you one thing that just like stuck out immediately is the various tribes that you meet in the game. The fact that this already feels like a really like dynamic world with a lot of different political factions that all exist and all are bumping up against each other and all have their own belief systems is very compelling, and is one of the things that's kind of dragging me through everything else, because I want to find out more about this. And I think at the heart of it, maybe that is one of those. That's the key to actually winning this category, is to build a world so compelling that it justifies everything else. And I think that's what Horizon Zero Dawn has.
The world carries that game through. Carries it as in everything else isn't as good, but it really is super interesting. It is kind of like what I said with Nier, where it's post-apocalyptic, but in a very different and interesting way. It's almost kind of so far post-apocalyptic that we are kind of in that new world phase. There are still remnants of the old world here and there, but it's not like, a desert wasteland or something where people are obsessed about finding out the secrets of the past. It's like life has kind of moved on and gone on. And some of the people are more tribalistic than others, maybe. But it is a new world, and it does have that sense of discovery. And, it is this... And there is something novel about kind of mixing this, like, hunter-gatherer, early man society thing with these giant robots that are kind of walking around. And the scale of it, too, is really impressive.
And I would also say that it's, out of all the games here, it's the one that has the biggest star. Like, Aloy is a character that I think people will respond to for a very long time and will want her to get sequel after sequel, because she is really well written and really well acted. And
yeah. Almost more so than the other games we brought up, there's a ton of franchise potential.
Yeah, and that's maybe a cynical way of putting it, but I agree with you. But I think the underlying factors that make it franchise potential is these really appealing aspects of its world and its characters. I think Nier Automata has some stuff there with 2B and 9S.
There will be more Nier games
for sure, but
sure.
It's not the same exact thing. It's not the same sort of. This is the mascot that will be on the next PlayStation box or whatever, which Aloy will be.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that brings us to the finalists. I put Neo on here, but that was just in case someone wanted to talk about it. And Prey. Prey was kind of a reboot and a weird one itself. So let's talk about these three finalists. Torment, Tides of Numenera, Gorogoa, Horizon Zero Dawn. I feel like it's kind of me and Mike maybe pushing for Horizon, but I don't want to take that over. Do you guys want to make an argument for Gorogoa or Torment taking this category?
I'll let Steph go first.
I love Gorogoa, and I do think that in a non-traditional sense, it's done a great job of building a world, but it's not the same experience as being able to roam free range around something that's fully fleshed out. So I do think that puts it at a disadvantage. I still haven't played Horizon Zero Dawn, though I need to get to that this week. But just how memorable it is to people makes me think that it's going to be super worthwhile. So I think that if you guys are saying Horizon Zero Dawn is, the best new universe, I'm totally okay.
Yeah, those are things I don't usually respond to as well. Is that the story and characters and games, I can usually take or leave them. I'm a mechanics and systems guy, but Horizon is winning me over with that stuff. Jason.
So I would argue that Torment would get it, because even though it was from an existing role-playing game, tabletop role-playing game, the world, the way it's realized in the video game is not just huge, but it's amazing. It has a great deal of character, more so than most of the worlds you see in games. It does other things because of that character that I don't think you're going to see in Horizon, and it's got far more flavor to it because you're interacting with so many different characters and so many more characters. It's better written, and it shows just because from the work of two of the authors who are on it.
I could see some of that, but it also feels like it is a, well, I guess Horizon could be as well, but a deviation of something that people have always liked. It's like, okay, here is our generic Dungeons and Dragons that we are finding ways to dress up and
Oh no, it's nothing like that.
Okay, well, I mean, so how is it different? Like, what is it doing? And it's not just like, I don't want just like, oh, it's got a different setting. Like, what is it doing to really establish its own identity?
Well, because its identity. So the identity is essentially the identity that you're praising Horizon for. You know, the way it's building upon this old world. It does that same, except that old world is always present in different ways than it is just the robotic dinosaurs marching around. It's in people's DNA. It's in people's what you find. It's in the quest and how you interact with them. It's with the different areas and planes and worlds you can travel to. It's not just this one area of this one world. It's confined to in Horizon.
I'm not too passionate about defending Horizon here. If you are that passionate about Torment, Torment is another game I want to get to still, and I could end up agreeing with you. So maybe Mike, if you want to make an argument.
Yeah. I don't know. You seem to be kind of dismissive of Horizon's writing, but I thought that was a strong point of that game. I thought it was very well written. I thought, especially in a kind of a character level, they made a lot of those characters very interesting. Alloy, her father figure, even a lot of the minor characters, just the people who are kind of in charge of the Sun Kingdom. Also, I know Horizon obviously takes a lot of inspiration from those kind of Far Cry, the Tomb Raiders, but Torment is much more inspired by one specific game, right?
Well, it's. People say, yeah, it's the spiritual successor to Planescape Torment, but no, what it is really the first adaptation of Numenera, the tabletop RPG.
Sure, but so again, there's a very direct inspiration. So in terms of like how impressive it is as a new universe, I mean, sure, it's new for gaming. I don't know. I would still very strongly, and again, I haven't really touched that one, Titan Numenera, as much as maybe I should have. But I would still pretty strongly say Horizon for this category.
Yeah, I would totally say you're wrong.
All right, then we need a tiebreaker.
Here's my thing: I think it's very easy in these discussions to get into bringing down the other game, and I'm much more interested in building up arguments for why a game should win.
Oh, good guy, Jeff.
Good podcast, Jeff.
Okay, so here's where it differs to me is the variety of companions, their own. When you're talking about the strength of writing, you're writing essentially for what 3 or 4 characters in Horizon, and that's it. Alloy, her mentor, and then a couple of the other people.
No, that's not right. I mean, I've already met like a dozen characters that I've had branching.
But are they omnipresent?
No, they're not omnipresent. No, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
but I mean,
well, you've got a full party in Torment.
Here's what real quick, Jason.
Those characters need that support.
It doesn't necessarily have to. You don't have to compare and contrast the two games. I just want to. I want you to build up an argument for this for Tides of New. Yeah, but not without having to say what it does better specifically than Horizon Zero Dawn.
Well, excuse me, but it seems like you're pissing on what I'm trying to do.
Don't be like you're being just like my wife when I try to say something.
I don't understand. I know you're pushing back at everything, bringing down my argument. So I don't understand what it is.
Basically, I just want to. I'm just trying to understand what you love about it because I want to love it.
I told you what I love about it. To me, it's a far better written game. It's got a much more interesting world that blends in millennia of different types of magic and technology with many more areas to explore, and stealth doesn't matter at all.
Well, I remain unconvinced. I don't know what has better authors means. I don't know. I tried to give you a chance to explain what made it better, and we didn't really get there. We have to end this podcast. Stephanie's got to get out of here. We all got to get out of here. So I think we're going to have to go ahead and give this one to Horizon Zero Dawn, just based on where we're going to have to leave this conversation. Who knows? I'll probably go play Torment Tides of Numenera and be completely convinced. But just as it stands, based on my understanding of what we talked to here, this one's going to Horizon. That's going to do it. We really do have to run. That's going to end the podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I really appreciate it. We will catch you tomorrow with more. We got new topics coming up for the rest of the week before Friday, where we are going to do our top 10 and the game of the year. So stay around for that. We will be back soon. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.